You're viewing the Parliament Channel 11, also broadcasting on 105.5 FM. Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament.
Professor Ramesh Deosaran, then Dr. Deosaran, first entered Parliament as an independent senator in
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, one and all. The pleasure is mine to reconvene this 17th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, and reconvene with the purpose of welcoming those of you who we invited to be with us today, pursuant to our inquiry into the staffing deficiencies at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and the impact of these deficiencies on the national security platform of Trinidad and Tobago, which matter is the direct concern and within the purview of the work of this Joint Select Committee. I must indicate that this hearing is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Might I, in those circumstances, warmly and sincerely welcome the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Director, Personnel Administration, and the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and the other officials who will have accompanied you as I invite you, beginning with the Director of Public Prosecutions, to introduce your good selves. Thank you.
A very good morning to the committee. My name is Roger Gaspard, Senior Counsel. I'm the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yes, members, shall we continue?
Good morning, members. I am Ingrid Siratan, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs.
Good morning, Chairman, members. Natake Tibadilchan, Deputy Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs.
I particularly welcome you.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome back.
Good morning, members. I am Diane George Thomas, Human Resource Director with the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Anastasia Creed, Deputy Director of Personnel Administration, Service Commissions Department.
Good morning to the committee. My name is Kumari Gulab Singh, Executive Director, SCD.
Good morning, Natasha Citron, Legal Advisor, Service Commissions Department.
Thank you all very, very much. Well, as might be obvious by now, I am Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, Chairman of... Oh, I'm sorry, there are other persons behind. I'm sorry. Please.
Good morning. My name is Melita St. Louis, Human Resource Officer, Service Commissions Department.
Good morning. Nicholas Suban, Senior Project Manager, Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. As I was indicating, I am Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, Chairman of this committee, and I'd like to have the other members of the committee, beginning with Senator Richards. Introduce yourselves.
Good morning once again, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. Paul Richards, member.
Michael Coppin, member.
If you'd permit me more than an introduction, please. Good morning, Faris Al-Rawi, member. Mr. Chairman, insofar as the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions comprise part of the ministry which I have conduct of and supervision of, I purposefully absented myself from pre-discussions of this committee this morning, and further I've attended simply to put on the record that I think it inappropriate for the Attorney General to sit on this particular matter, because I would want to make sure that the persons before this committee had the freedom to say whatever they did without the appearance of a line minister being in any near proximity at all. So for those purposes, I wish to recuse myself from this inquiry and ask leave to take my leave now.
Let me, on behalf of the committee, say that I am in total admiration of your professionalism. We will miss you because your contributions at this committee are very substantial, but we do understand your submission and we accept your request for recusal in the circumstances. And we look forward, really look forward to your presence at our next meeting. And we thank you for your work. Thank you.
Good morning, Prakash Ramada, Vice Chair.
Morning, Nigel Freitas, member.
Good morning, Nicole Olivier, member.
And might I say, we have here in strong support of this committee and its work, our secretary, who I should now ask to introduce herself, as well as the, well, let me do the honors. Our secretary, Madam Jackie Sampson Miguel, and Mr. Brian Caesar, our secretary and support secretary to this committee, of course, Clerk of the House and Clerk of the Senate respectively, and of course we have other members of the support team, very professional and hardworking. We thank you all very much. Now, the objectives of this inquiry largely are about gaining a comprehensive understanding of the staffing deficiencies of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, including the recruitment process for the Office of the DPP, so-called, and the agencies responsible at each stage of the process. This inquiry has to do as well with the reasons for the inability of the Office of the DPP to recruit and retain key personnel. 2, to understand the steps that have been taken by the DPP, the DPA, and the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs to alleviate the human resource challenges at the said Office of the DPP. Thirdly, to assess what progress has been made with respect to clearing the backlog of outstanding criminal matters in this country, particularly in light of the fact that the Parliament is now in active consideration of measures including trial by judge alone, as well the abolition of the old preliminary inquiry process, all with a view of clearing the backlog that now exists and might be growing. Fourthly, to understand the contingencies in place at the Office of the DPP to manage the current caseload in the face of persisting and persistent human resource constraints. And finally, to provide recommendations to the Parliament and assistance to the Office of the DPP and other relevant agencies where possible. Our function, having interrogated, having identified what the facts are, it is as well to encourage improvement in the processes, in the system, and we do so by making recommendations to the Parliament, who we represent in this committee as a subset. And of course, we make recommendations to the respective agencies on the basis of our knowledge so that you might and help wherever we can. We received submissions to requests for them from the Office of the DPP, which we now acknowledge. And this response from the DPP was dated February the 6th, 2017. We received responses or a response from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, dated March the 3rd, 2017, and as well, commendably, from the DPA, dated March the 3rd, 2017. I would now like to indicate that this inquiry had its genesis in a particular state of affairs. This had to do with a report in the Trinidad Guardian dated January the 21st, 2017, and it was captioned, "3 Walk Free of 2014 Murder." The article stated that due to the absence of a assigned state attorney at a preliminary inquiry scheduled to begin on January the 20th, 2017, the matter was dismissed. This occurrence engaged the attention of this Joint Select Committee as an issue requiring immediate attention. And this inquiry really flowed from that. That is not to say that there were not other matters in the public domain, including often repeated plaintiff statements coming from the office holder, the Director of Public Prosecutions himself, at similar fora, where these matters were not made, as I say, public. By letter dated the 1st of February 2017 to the DPP, the committee initiated an investigation and we called for information regarding this failure of the state attorney to appear and the consequences that flowed from it. We requested written responses, and I alluded to those a while ago, which we happily got from the respective persons. So in these written submissions, thorough answers were offered, but this is a public inquiry and elucidation will flow in this inquiry. I would therefore like to ask, in this order, the DPP, the DPA, and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs to engage us with some brief opening remarks in light of those facts as I have just outlined them. Mr. Roger Gaspard of Senior Counsel.
If I may be permitted, Mr. Chairman, to begin, not in the way that perhaps you would have begun, but begin with the issue that would have triggered these proceedings, as you would have just intimated. As far as that issue is concerned, I would stand by my remarks and comments, which find themselves in the written correspondence I would have sent to this committee when the inquiry was made of my office following the publication in the newspaper of the article in question. The opening salvo was pretty wide, and I would respectfully request perhaps that you telegraph to me which area you might like me to first comment upon?
These are just brief opening comments as you see fit in light of the parameters as I've set them, because we will engage in more direct interrogation in a short while. So it's really a matter for you.
Very well.
Thank you.
In that context, Mr. Chairman, I would merely like to say that I appreciate the fact that I've been invited to speak on these issues. These issues are very troubling issues for the criminal justice system. I welcome the invitation, and I look forward to making a meaningful contribution to all inquiries posed by the members of this committee.
Thank you very warmly.
Good morning again, Chair. The Service Commissions Department serves as the Secretariat for 4 constitutional commissions, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission being one of them. That Secretariat is presently staffed with 1 Executive Director, Human Resource, 1 Human Resource Officer, and some clerical and secretarial staff. To provide support to the Judicial and Legal Service Commission for 439 judicial and legal officers under that service. With the limited resources, the Service Commissions Department attempt to assist the Commission in fulfilling its constitutional mandate.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Chairman, members. As the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, as the Permanent Secretary, I've looked very keenly at the current status of what exists in the DPP's office. We have been working closely with the Service Commissions Department to find a way so that we can fill many of the positions that are existing there in the department of the DPP. We've made some headway in terms of filling some of the positions, and some of the positions which have been recommended by the DPP for filling, we have still in discussions as to the way forward in doing some of these positions. Very soon we would have a concrete way forward in how we're going to go forward with filling many of the positions that do exist at the department.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gaspard, in your oral submission during the public inquiry on March the 18th, 2016, with another Joint Select Committee dealing with finance and legal affairs, you outlined an approach for recruitment of staff as well as relocation of your office to larger accommodation in Port of Spain and San Fernando, and the possible establishment of an office in Tobago to house a full staff complement. Do you recall?
I do.
Yes. Have these landmarks been achieved since then? Have there been any serious approach to achieving them? Have some of these positions been filled? If so, which? Please.
I regret to inform you that the landmarks have not been attained. I'm happy to inform you that some serious efforts and approaches have been made towards achieving those goals. But be that as it may, if I may, by reason of Cabinet Minute 1450 dated May the 23rd, 2013, and approved on May the 29th, 2013, the new organizational structure proposed by the Office of the DPP was approved. That having been approved, there was an urgent need for the filling of the posts as approved in the new structure. The number of professional staff as approved in the new structure amounted to 137. As we speak, the DPP's office has about 60 professional staff members as we speak. You no doubt bear in mind, Mr. Chairman, that the approval by Cabinet would have been since May 29, 2013. As we speak, Mr. Chairman, there are 46 attorneys or posts of State Council 2, 11 of which are currently occupied. With respect to State Council 3 positions, there are 25 posts, 12 of which are currently occupied. With respect to the posts of Senior State Council, there are 15 approved posts, 13 of which remain vacant, 2 of which are currently occupied. The Cabinet did approve a staff complement of 33 attorneys for the post of State Council 1, and only recently I learned, not directly, that 32 persons had been appointed to the post of State Council 1. A fax, in fact, would have been sent to my office on the 13th of February, which indicated as much. No official correspondence has been addressed to the DPP to date. But suffice it to say, I've also read in the newspaper that we have to get this injection of 32 attorneys to fill the post of State Council 1. I should inform you that of those 32 attorneys, 9 of them are already housed at the DPP's office as legal officers.
Oh, I see.
So, in real terms or in net terms, the injection would really amount to 23 attorneys. As we speak, I understand that at least 2 of them may have declined to take up the post. With respect to the senior posts, there are 2 posts currently vacant at the level of Deputy DPP. The approved structure contemplates 3 posts of Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. There's only 1 post filled. With respect to the post of Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions, the approved structure contemplated 6 posts, 2 are filled. With respect to the housing needs of the Director of Public Prosecutions Office, the Director of Public Prosecutions Office has clearly outgrown the current accommodation in Port of Spain. There would have been a number of meetings and site visits by ministry officials and the Director of Public Prosecutions and senior staff so as to identify suitable accommodation for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to be removed from the present site to a more propitious location. As you would expect, there have been some problems in organizing that move and indeed in identifying suitable accommodation, bearing in mind the difficulties which attend upon accommodation, suitable accommodation, or its acquisition in Port of Spain and environs. Those difficulties are compounded and sometimes exacerbated by the fact that parking poses a particular challenge. We are still at the same location, and for the last maybe 2.5 years, I have been hearing intimations and murmurings about a proposed move. With respect to the office in San Fernando, the DPP's office took the liberty of inviting the Honorable Attorney General and Line Minister for the office, Mr. Faris Al-Rawi, to visit the DPP's office in San Fernando, where he was treated to some unsightly sights, including the building being rat-infested, poor functioning air-conditioned systems, cramped surroundings, attorneys having to park in the road, no parking for some attorneys. it's really a situation of administrative morass, in my respectful view. We also visited several areas on the suggestion and recommendation of the Attorney General, and not just the incumbent, but his predecessor in office. And either none of those building sites were found to be suitable, or there has been a somewhat protracted arrangements to acquire building sites or suitable accommodation. Fortunately, we have identified one location in, of all places, the Gulf City Mall, and you may hear from the ministry officials as to the progress of and developments in relation to the acquisition of those premises. But I would respectfully suggest or state that some headway has been made towards acquiring suitable accommodation in San Fernando. It has always been my view that, bearing in mind that this is a twin island republic and the country is Trinidad and Tobago, I always felt that we were doing a bit of a disservice to Tobagonians by not having a Director of Public Prosecutions office or sub-office in Tobago. Hence, I would have been making representations in the past, maybe for the past 5 years, for a DPP's sub-office to be located in Tobago at least. As we speak, officers from Tobago have to traverse to and from Trinidad and Tobago. The situation is compounded by the availability of flights, and I found that to be a sorry state of affairs, hence the reason why I've always been making these representations within the last 5 years. In conjunction with ministry officials, I visited several prospective sites in Tobago, which may have provided some housing or which may have satisfied our housing needs. And I'm happy to report to you that we have identified one such site, and there are certain developments in train which give rise to my optimism that perhaps before long we should have acquired a sub-office in Tobago. Because of the complexity in crime, because of the shortage in staff, I am of the view that the DPP's office would function much more efficiently if we were to have a suitable case management system in place. Towards that end, I would have made certain proposals now running for more than 2.5 years. And for various reasons, the ministry has been unable to provide us with a case management system. The case management system would go some way towards making up for the deficiency in staff in terms of numbers. And I'm also happy to report that some progress would have been made, but in my respectful view, the progress has been too slow, and the progress has not been afforded the kind of attention that I would have expected. I know that the Facilities Department at the Attorney General's office has recruited a software company to create a case management system suited to our peculiar needs. And this system ought to contemplate the accommodation and setting up of specialized units in the Director of Public Prosecutions office. These units should include a homicide unit, a financial crimes unit, a narcotics unit, and a unit dealing with sexual offenses. It is envisaged that after the intake of files into the system, the files would be allocated to each unit head and thereafter assigned and tracked through every stage to completion, thus allowing communication between unit heads and the assigned attorneys. The case management system, when effectuated, would also house authorities, cases, and documents relating to each file. The system also provides reminders regarding legal requirements, timelines, and outstanding task leads as they relate to each file. The system is therefore expected to create an improvement in efficiency. During the testing phase, certain issues were discovered which would affect the efficacy and optimum functionality of the system. The IT unit and the software company, I understand, are currently working on the thorny issues.
Let me make a quick intervention here, if you would permit me, before I open the floor up. The picture that you have so lucidly painted is a very burdensome and painful one. I have a gut feeling of pain for you. I know you are a very capable professional, and I want to take the opportunity, I feel moved to do this on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to thank you for your work in this country as office holder of the office of the DPP to date. I don't think the public will easily contemplate what is in front of you, but today, to learn, because I realize from your submissions that if all these issues surround you, who are in your position, established under the Constitution, with legal expertise to give advice and direction on legal issues, but I get the distinct feeling that you are burdened with administrative problems, issues, and that must have an effect on your capacity to do that which you are expected to do. I get the distinct understanding that you rely on others to recruit the personnel that you need. In fact, in respect of the group of 32 state council that you alluded to a while ago, you are not even sure, and you gathered from the newspaper what the facts and circumstances might be in relation to them. I pain for you. This is a sorry picture. And this country obviously has to do more to support your very, very, very important office. And I'm happy to know that you find optimism in all of this. I hear it in your voice, and I'm happy about that. But just before I give way to my colleagues, I would like, for the benefit of those who are looking and listening to this broadcast, because as a lawyer, as a professional as indeed you are, you use a lot of terms of legal art and a lot of language that the layman out there may not altogether understand. I want you to explain in a language that he could understand what is this case management system, and then I should open to Senator De Freitas to ask a couple questions of you all.
Put very simply, the case management system is a system which enables to do so in a more efficient manner. But it doesn't stop with the mere signing of files. It also provides us with a great platform to monitor those files as assigned and to monitor work done on the files by way of preparatory work done by attorneys charged with the carriage and conduct of those matters in the courts.
Yes, and I was happy to hear that your vision is for some degree of specialization in that regard within the department. Sexual offenses, very prevalent in Trinidad and the world today, homicides, and other categories as you described them. Senator De Freitas.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Just for clarification on the topic of case management system. I wanted to know, just yes or no, is the system being used right now, or is it still going through a feasibility stage at all?
Owing to certain issues which seem to be proving quite nettlesome, the system is not yet up and running.
Okay. And do you envision, and I think you may have alluded to this, that the system would improve the case management flow for your office?
That would have been the only reason why I would have proposed it.
Okay.
Good morning, Director. First of all,
Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Let me just indicate I've known you for many years, and I too want to join in my congratulations for the tremendous burdens you've carried in very difficult circumstances for a long period of time.
Thank you, sir.
And the mission of this committee, in a large part, is to assist you to streamline and better make efficient the work that you do, as critical as it is, and I could foresee now it's becoming even more critical. But what I'm hearing here is there's a lack of understanding of the urgency of your circumstances by others over whom you have no control to do things. And we have, not just in this committee, but in other committees, have seen an approach, and this is not a criticism for the sake of criticism, but really for a wake-up call, that there are certain issues in the society, yours being one of the foremost of importance, that requires a different view. It is not business as usual in the old day. And speaking also from the experience as a former minister, I share your pain and that of the chairman, that there is a sort of numbness in the society, that we could allow things by the passage of paper from month to month to year, rather than a matter of days in terms of the urgency of the actions required. Now, having said that, can you assist us, because you're a very experienced person, not just as the administrator of the DPP's department, but as a lawyer, as a prosecutor, of the immediate needs, and there are persons in this room who have responsibility that should fall to them immediately to understand what you require as a first option, and then we'll hear from them what they've done to further the benefits that you require. So if you will tell us, because we've heard a lot, but I like to boil down things. What is it do you need now, and who is responsible for making that happen? Thank you very much, Director.
I think what the office needs now would be an augmenting in the current staff complement, especially in light of the prevailing winds, which seem to be developing speed. And by that I mean the imminent introduction of the criminal procedure rules. The heady and galloping state of crime, in particularly homicides. The legislation dealing with the abolition of preliminary inquiries, which some people seem to be representing to be the panacea for the chronic and pedestrian, the chronically pedestrian pace of the criminal justice system. That approach, respectfully, is a bit short-sighted, because even as we speak, there are at least 800 murder indictments pending for trial in the High Court. They are not dependent on any preliminary inquiry anymore. They have passed that stage. And I'm only speaking in the context of murder. So what you have with the abolition of preliminary inquiries, if I may be somewhat tangential, is a quicker movement of the matters from the charge stage to the High Court stage. But when you reach in the High Court, you have to wait in a queue. How do you get ahead in that queue unless you deal with the issues that have caused that queue to be formed in the first place, and which otherwise infect the criminal justice system? Now, on the issue, Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, of increasing the complement of staff. I heard the Honorable Attorney General publicly say, not too long ago, a couple of nights ago in San Fernando, that the DPP's office currently deals with about 5% of PIs. If you're moving from 5% of PIs to the DPP's office having to treat with 100% of the indictable matters, basically with the same staff or negligible accretions or additions to the staff, the arithmetic just does not work out.
In which case, before I permit Senator Richards to assume the line that he must, the question of recruiting staff falls to the Office of the DPA, which acts as secretariat to the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, which appoints the professional lawyers in your department. That's correct?
Yes, sir.
I must ask the DPA whether she has an acute sense of the problem as has just been identified by the Honorable Office Holder, and whether there's a sense of urgency in an understanding of the issues as you have just identified them, the burgeoning crime tsunami that is getting on top of us, the amendments to certain pieces of legislation that will accelerate processes, legal processes that will land on the doorstep of the DPP, among other things. Is the office of the DPA, because you did say in your opening comments, Madam DPA, that, and I wondered why you said it, your opening comments, that you treat with the Judicial and Legal Service Commission and a couple others, and you have this small secretariat and you identify the staff complement. Were you trying to tell us that you have the same problems that the DPP has, and therefore when he calls for support, you can't help him? Tell us. And I must develop the metaphor. In the arena of war conflict, when, for an example, just briefly so that the public can understand what I'm getting at, when the Americans, for example, were in Vietnam, there were a number of military outposts around Vietnam. When one come under attack, they call for support from another. But on one fateful day, there was an attack on every single outpost, and none could help the next. Are you in that situation? And if so, what are you doing about it?
Good morning again, Chair.
Good morning, Madam DPA.
The Judicial and Legal Service Commission, of whom we are the secretariat to, has attempted, with the resources that we have and the matters that we have placed against them, to fill offices in the office of the DPP. So, for instance, in January this year, as indicated, 33 offices were filled of State Council 1.
He didn't know.
No, but the communication that would go from the Service Commissions Department to the Permanent Secretary, because that is the conduit for communication with that department. Okay?
He didn't know.
I hear you, and I repeat again, the communication goes to the Permanent Secretary. In 2014 or 2015, there was even a meeting between the DPP and the DPA as we attempted to see what were the issues that were addressed, that he experienced. And he did indicate to me one of his issues was staffing. So the Judicial and Legal Service Commission was approached.
No, let me intervene. Not one of his issues. His major issue, the lifeblood of his department, depends on that.
Right.
Depends on you, because he doesn't recruit them himself.
That's right.
He can't.
The Judicial and Legal Service Commission has even changed its approach to recruitment. In the past, it was the commission members alone that interviewed persons who applied. in an attempt to hasten the process, a new system was put into place where persons who have retired in the field have been assisting with the interviews, have been recruited to assist with the interviews to hasten the process.
That's commendable.
Right? So that was done. I have to say, on the other hand, with regard, we got communication from the permanent secretary asking us to hold our hand for the time being for the Office of Senior State Counsel and the Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions to put it on hold. Now, this last correspondence was in March this year, and in previous years, we did get correspondence asking us to hold for until they were ready for the assumption of persons.
Madam PS, did you hear the submission of the DPA?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you hear her say that she was advised, instructed to hold
Yes, sir.
in the circumstances that the DPP has just demonstrated?
Yes, sir.
Pray, tell us, what would be the rationale for holding in the face of a tsunami?
Okay, Chairman, if I may, earlier this year, we did make submissions to the Commission for the filling of positions of Assistant DPA, Senior State Counsel, some promotions, and also State Counsel 3. The position, I'd start before the position of State Counsel 3 was advertised in December of 2016, of which the applications are now being screened by the Office of the DPA for interviews to commence. So that is in process with the State Counsel 3. Just yesterday, I did have a conversation trying to clarify a number of issues in the filling of the positions for which recommendations were made with the DPP. And it was only on his recommendation that we hold these recommendations pending further discussions between us on the way forward, because he wanted to put in some additional recommendations. And that was the only reason, and that was only yesterday when the information was conveyed to the Office of the DPA to hold on these recommendations pending our further discussions on the issue. Sure, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I am very troubled that there was an approval since May of 2013, a cabinet approval. Would you walk us through then, what are the steps until we have feet on the ground? Because that is, 3 years plus, going into 4. That there was an approval for the new structure so that we could better understand, because we do appreciate in each department there will be difficulties. And I think the country needs to understand what those difficulties are and how we're going to fix them. Because from my experience, I will tell you, this thing about writing letters takes up an unnecessary and an unwholesome waste of time, and that if we could have face-to-face interaction like the chairman has allowed today, a lot of these difficulties could be rid of. So could you just quickly, if you could, please, whoever is in the best position to do so, the step-by-step after there is an approval from a cabinet to do things, to actually put feet on the ground, to make it real. Thank you.
It falls to me. Once an approval is received for filling of vacant posts, creation of positions, all right, recommendations must be made, whether it be by promotions, depending if there are persons to be promoted in the respective office, or a decision taken whether those positions need to be advertised. So once those decisions are taken of whether they be advertised or they be filled by way of promotion, those recommendations are made to the Office of the DPA for the filling of the offices. Now, it would be remiss of me to say that I would know what would have transpired since the 2014, given that I was not in the office at that time. So I can't speak to what would have transpired. But I can say since I have assumed the office there permanently, I can speak to what we would have done in terms of that. On occasions, I've had meetings with the DPP to determine how to fill certain of the positions. Based on those discussions in months in the end of 2015, that's when I assume, in 2016 recommendations were made for filling for advertising of offices, and which our recommendations that we would have put forward to the DPA for action.
Could I, with all due respect, take no comfort in the fact that, I mean, I appreciate that you would have taken over, but there must have been a line at which, that you met when you arrived. And if anybody else in this room could tell us what happened prior to that line that you met. From May 2013, we're talking the 4th anniversary approaching us.
Go ahead.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, there's an issue that needs to be brought to your attention, which may go somewhere in perhaps demystifying the progress, read the timelines. Because of the lack of space, accommodation, the spatial needs of the DPP's office, it was suggested to the JSC that if they were to send, say, all 137 attorneys to the current building that we had, one in Port of Spain, buildings, one in Port of Spain, one in San Fernando, there would be no place to put them. So part of the reason why a whole was suggested would have been in anticipation of new and improved accommodation and housing requirements. So what I would have suggested was that we take on the complement as approved incrementally, subject to some amelioration in terms of our housing, since there will be no place to put these people when they come. But be that as it may, there would have been internal promotions. So those persons at level State Council 1 and 2 levels, they would have been promoted to State Council 3. The people at State Council 1 level would have gone to State Council 2. And then there was the express indication that the post of State Council 1 would thereafter be filled, albeit incrementally, and we had asked for a certain number, I believe it was 25. Since maybe 2 years now, until this recent exchange, nothing was done in relation to the post of State Council 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the Director, Mr. Gaspard, and the panel.
Morning, sir.
Thank you for being with us this morning. And I must admit that I share your pain in many instances based on what you've outlined so far. You know, I wish to put on record, Mr. Chairman, that unfortunately we find ourselves in a position again where among the reasons that issues are not being resolved, as we have heard with the Forensic Sciences Center, with critical issues that are affecting the criminal justice system, is something as perfunctory as space. And I don't want to denigrate the issue anymore, but it's tragic that something like accommodation is hampering the fight against the criminals in this country at this time. If it is an issue in your case and the case of the Forensic Sciences Center, one can only wonder what else other institutions this is affecting. And this is something that should not be beyond us in this country. With that said, Mr. Director, you indicated out of 137 staff members envisioned in the organizational structure approved in 2013, you have 60, less than half, approved. And I was wondering how, if the 137 was based on the envisioned new org structure and case management system that you have outlined, would that be correct?
You are correct, sir.
With that said, because of the lack of implementation of the case management system and a more than 50% shortfall, would you be able to tell us, in terms of projected cases under these circumstances, how much of a shortfall it has impacted in your projected cases, even with the resources you have?
It is difficult to make that type of diagnosis quantitatively, but surely qualitatively, given the fact that the DPP's office is being pressed at the seams, it's inevitable that it's going to affect efficiency levels, it's going to affect morale, it gives rise to hemorrhaging from the department, it gives rise to a certain level of frustration, it gives rise perhaps sometimes to inadequate preparation or preparation that could be better.
In terms of, I don't know if Mrs. Creek can answer this or anyone else on the panel. In terms of the trying to fill these positions, in addition to the holes that have been outlined, the DPP indicated that there were 2 people who declined the posts. How much success, even before the holes were advised, have you been able to achieve in terms of attracting people to these positions? And in your interviews or assessments, what would have been their main reasons for declining the positions and people not picking them up in the first place?
If I may, Chair, I just want to go back a little bit because a question was asked a little earlier. And I want to say, besides, aside from the present fill-in, the recent fill-ins that we had in 2015, positions were advertised, 12 officers were promoted as State Council 3s, 12 officers were promoted as State Council 2s. But on the advertisements, when we go through the process, sometimes the responses, the suitability, and at the end of the day, the list that is established and accepted by the Commission, therefore the DPA could only do recommendations if there's a pool from which to work. Can you repeat your...
With that said, have you been able to make an assessment based on the requirements outlined by the DPP's office with the new org structure? If we simply don't have the cadre of qualified, experienced personnel to fill these positions, if they are not coming forward because of, if I am somebody who's qualified and I'm hearing about these issues, I'm not necessarily going to run into that situation. You know, it's going to be frustrating even to take up that position, because why would I run into a situation hearing about these kinds of challenges without being able to make any impact at all in my own career and in contributing to the growth and development of my country?
If I may, Mrs. Gulab Singh is the officer who deals directly with all the applications, the candidates, persons who respond. She might be able to share some more information.
Certainly.
With you.
Thank you. Good morning again. With respect to the Office of State Council 1, the Commission made a decision 31st of January to fill all 33 vacant positions. Persons were given staggered dates to assume duty. By the end of March 2017, all of those persons would have assumed duties. However, thus far, 4 persons have indicated, 1 have indicated that they are no longer interested in the position, and 3 persons, they have asked to defer the time by which to assume duties as State Council 1. One of the challenge that we have is that for the higher offices, for example, and I will give an example with respect to the notice of vacancy that went out for State Council 3, right? It went out on the 14th of November 2016, and only 17 applications was received for that office, right? This is going to be going to the Commission, round robin, on the 28th, because the Commission, they engage in shortlisting of applications, right? Once we have an approved shortlisting, we'll set up interviews by the subcommittee, and fill-ins for State Council 3 hopefully should be done by the 25th of April 2017.
And I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but what would have been the reasons the 2 persons declined the posts as indicated earlier on?
I understand that persons are, as the PS Attorney General would have alluded to earlier, persons are on contract at the office of the DPP. So apparently they are awaiting for the expiration of those contracts to come into the established positions.
Well, if the pay is better.
Precisely.
Because I'm sure that there are some salary considerations inside of there. Apart from which, this question of retaining is also important. Mr. DPP, do you find that there's a rapidity in so far as turnover is concerned, or do you find the retention feature is predominant once they come in? Just as a quick response.
Traditionally, and more so within recent times, several persons have treated with the DPP's office as a stepping stone to the magistracy and to other government departments. So you find that the persons with between 3 and 7 years experience, they tend to be seduced, if not attracted, by other offers outside of the department. And I would tell you that within the last 10 years or so, about 46 persons would have resigned from the DPP's office, 8 of whom had 7 to 20 years service, 4 of whom had 5 to 13 years service, 6 of whom had 3 years service, 2 of whom had 8 years service, 2 of whom had 3 years service, and within recently, 1 person who had a service of 3 years, 8 months. 46 in 10 years.
Mr. DPP, would I be over-dramatic in saying that people are fleeing your office?
I mightn't characterize it as such, but I might have difficulty finding fault with your characterization.
With that said, and with the shortfall of more than 50%, as you outlined earlier on, of the 137 staff members indicated in the new organizational structure approved in 2013, and the several reasons outlined for the inability to fill many of those positions, including holes, are you at all optimistic of even getting to a functional, optimal operation in terms of staffing and retention?
Yes, I'm optimistic, and my optimism is predicated on my being positive about the respective stakeholders' appreciation for their revisiting of the remuneration packages which are currently afforded to members of the DPP's office, bearing in mind the risk factors. Bearing in mind the risk factors, more and more I'm hearing from budding attorneys and prospective applicants considerations predicated upon risk.
Yes, I can easily understand that. I recall, Mr. DPP, and I spoke on it in my last parliamentary contribution just on Wednesday, or a couple days ago. I recall, while as a practitioner in the criminal court, defending a particular murder accused in a double murder. And when the accused apparently found that the evidence as preferred by an officer of the office of the DPP was not going in the way he found that it was going, he tapped me on my shoulder and I reacted to it. Because, you know, they sit right behind an attorney, a very awkward situation sometimes, especially in the cramped magistrate's court. But the man looked at me and asked me whether I can get the name and the address of the officer. And when I looked into his eyes and given the fact that brought him before the court, I understood exactly where he was heading. So I can easily understand that there's a measure of risk. And it is not a popular thing to be prosecuted. It requires a kind of strength, a kind of commitment, and therefore, yes, you all deserve, the office of the DPP, as happens in the United States and in other civilized jurisdictions, all the help, all the support we could get. Having said so, between the DPA, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of the Attorney General, and to a lesser extent your good self, whatever the reasons, today you are not anywhere close to where you and your office ought to be in terms of our respect, in terms of our appreciation for what you do, in terms of even housing, accommodation, and your remuneration and all of that. In a land where these things, as Senator Richards alluded to a while ago, ought not over the last 20 years to have been an issue. So it comes down to the way we prioritized and the low energy and the low level of appreciation that we might have had as a society for your office and what we have done. And I will conclude my contribution on this particular point before I give
I have just two quick questions.
Yes, before I give way to
round,
Senator Richards again, and then Senator Coppin, and then Senator, my colleague. Really, in light of all that we have so far heard here today, we have to cut through the chase. This thing is crisis, this thing is urgent. We have to find ways, far more creative ways, to resolve these problems. It is painfully sad in all the circumstances. But Senator Richards, Senator Coppin, and then Mr. Ramada.
Mr. Gaspard, once again, I know you indicated earlier on that it was difficult to quantify the impact this is having on your operations and also quantify your performance level, but I think the public needs to get a sense of, based on your experience and your vast experience, how much these shortcomings, the impact it's having on your operation, what level in terms of your projected output would you say you're operating at between 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, in terms of what you think you can achieve if the circumstances were even moderately optimal? If you're operating at 5 to 50% at your potential based on the shortcomings, 30%.
I would say that we're operating somewhere close to 60%, 65%, and that is a large measure due to the efforts of the professional staff going way over and beyond the call of duty.
And in the absence of the case management system that you envision, what system are you using now, and what's the biggest challenge with it?
The system that we are using now is the manual, old school assigning of files, the old and somewhat laborious way of monitoring files. That is the system that we are using now. It's a system that requires you to be, that would take up a lot of time that could be expended on better preparation of files, time that could be expended on better development of your forensic skills as an advocate. So the administrative burden is much heavier than it should be when contrasted with your professional responsibility as an advocate for the prosecution.
Question to Ms. DPP Gaspard. We had intended to ask you about the purported complement or increase in staff recently reported in the paper on February the 12th, in which you were quoted as saying that a certain new types of criminal investigation and prosecutions were expected to be led, such as money laundering and terrorist financing, and you needed the staff to do it. Now, earlier in your submissions, you would have elucidated or informed this committee that, in fact, in truth and in fact, 9 of those individuals are already employed at the at the DPP, and therefore, in truth and in fact, there's really only going to be about an increase of effectively 23 individuals. Now, having regard for that long run-up, I want to speak a bit about the forward round mutual evaluation report, which was conducted, and that's the FATF. Now, there's as the chairman likes to say, a folklore in Trinidad and Tobago that persons who are involved in high crimes, white-collar crimes, are seldom ever charged or prosecuted. And in fact, if one looks at the fourth-round mutual evaluation report, we would have seen that, notwithstanding the fact that there are a number of predicate offenses identified in the years 2013 and 2014, and those relate to high white-collar crimes such as corruption and drug trafficking, terrorist financing, human trafficking, money laundering, that in fact, there have really only been 3 recorded cases, as at the date of that report, 3 recorded cases of money laundering, and only 5 individuals who were actually charged for money laundering offenses. Now, in that said report, the DPP is quoted as having an intention to establish a financial crimes unit. And it's there where I really want to focus my attention, having regard for what was recently stated in the newspaper and what was stated in this fourth-round mutual evaluation report. I want to know what, if any, are those plans, are there still plans for the establishment of a financial crimes unit? And would these 23 individuals somehow be put to work there, or is there any other plans to increase the complement of staff to put them to work in the financial crimes unit?
Thank you very much. That is a question that several persons tend to pose to me, especially in the context of money laundering. But to my mind, as I would have intimated to persons in the past, if you do not have the requisite complement of staff, and you have a specialized unit dealing with money laundering, and the police are not sending money laundering files to you, what would these persons in the specialized unit of money laundering be doing? Bearing in mind that we need all hands on deck already.
Well, so my understanding is that in the said report, in fact, I have the statistics before us. There are certain predicate offenses which were identified. Corruption in the year 2013, 8. In the year 2014, 5. Drug trafficking, 44. In the year 2013. In the year 2014, 110. Terrorist financing, 8 in 2013. In the year 2014, 8. Human trafficking, 1, 2013. In the year 2014, 6. In the year money laundering, 2013, money laundering, 102. In 2014, 246. And I can go on. So there appears to be a lot of information of a file somewhere which enabled the persons or the compilers of this report to say that there are so and so many predicate offenses. Now, the DPP is constitutionally charged with prosecuting these offenses. Are you saying that no files have been passed to you as it relates to these white-collar crimes?
I'm not saying that no files have been passed to me. I'm saying that the picture that you are painting is flattering in that within the last 6 months to a year, I have detected an improvement in the investigative skill of the police, so that we are getting more and more money laundering files. Before that, there would be perhaps 100 money laundering investigations. But what I'm saying is, they were not transmogrifying into the presentation of files for the DPP's office. The DPP's office is not an investigative office. We have no investigative capacity. So we need to get the baton from the police in order to run that particular race. And what I'm saying is, in terms of those matters, and I can drill down and be even more particular. There are several high-profile white-collar crimes being investigated by the police for the last 5 years. None of the files have come to my office. And I can name a few.
I don't mean to challenge you at all. I'm just saying that.
I do not mind if you challenge me. I welcome that.
Well, because well, I'm quoted directly from the fourth round mutual evaluation report, and they speak to, and I quote, enormous backlog of cases, and that relates specifically to predicated offenses. So excuse me if the information that I have before me and what you're saying are divergence. So I don't know, perhaps if you can clarify for us a more direct question. How many cases do you have before you that involve money laundering, terrorist financing, corruption, drug trafficking, and those type of what they call predicate offenses to which the fourth round mutual evaluation report speaks to?
A quick intervention here as chairman, Mr. Gaspard. If the question, as has been put by the member, is not one for which you have an accurate, ascertained response, then you are encouraged to respond. You must respond, but of course you can do so in writing later. The figures he has called for, you may not have had them at your fingertip. Please.
Yes, and I would respectfully request to answer that question in writing, since I do not have those figures at my fingertips.
Well, could I then ask me a lighter question, perhaps? Could you tell us whether or not the persons in the DPP's office are trained, where if those files do in fact come to your desk, to respond immediately to those matters?
The people at the DPP's office, there are persons at the DPP's office who are well equipped to handle those matters.
Great, thank you.
Just one qualification, please, Mr. Chairman, if I might crave your indulgence. I can say as a fact that as far as the matter of terrorist financing is concerned, we have no files, as a fact.
All right, thank you. But for the benefit of the public who would have heard the question and that response, it was reported in the Parliament recently, and therefore to the public, that there were about 132 cases where there was suspicion of transactions between persons from Trinidad and Tobago making contributions to known terrorist personnel or identified terrorist organizations, and those matters are being investigated. So, I am wanting the public to understand, while the DPP has accurately said there are no files in his office, maybe they have not gotten there as yet because there are cases under investigation, and therefore, at this time, they rest with the requisite or the relevant agency within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Am I correct?
You are quite correct, sir.
Am I correct, Senator? Is this the case? Let me give way to the lone female member of this committee this morning, Member Oliveri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to go back from a moment to the issue of the staffing. Now, we spoke at length to the deficiency in the professional staff, state councils and upwards. However, on the administrative level, things like court clerks and research officers, from your submission, it seems that there are a number of vacant positions in those areas, 11 positions of research officers that are vacant, and just about 40 positions of court clerk in the various levels that are vacant on the establishment. Is it that, are there in fact officers who are contract officers performing these duties? Or if not, if there are nobodies doing these duties, what type of work is not being done as a result of these positions remaining vacant? And how much is that impacting on the administrative burden of the professional staff, given the archaic case management system?
Thank you very much. It stands to reason in any organization, and sometimes the role is downplayed, but sometimes you are only as good professionally as the support you get from the non-professional staff. The reason why I may have perhaps lopsidedly been speaking about the professional staff is because the office of the DPP, its primary function is prosecution, and that is done by professional staff. That is not to say that I intended to trivialize the contribution of the non-professional staff, because They are crucial by way of support. The fact that our spatial needs are as they are, that too militates against our taking on administrative staff. And if I had to prioritize, I would focus at this stage on acquiring more professional staff, albeit I might have to burden them with even more work. And they may have to do things that in a better system or a better functioning place would have been done by the administrative staff. You have professional staff members doing a lot of photocopying. You have professional staff members, fortunately at this stage, using their own computers to type up arguments, which reduces to some extent the burden on, say, the typists, the messengers, the clerks, etc., etc. And this is how the DPP's office is trying to manage with the little that we have.
Well, this is not altogether unique. Human beings are adaptable to their circumstances, and that's what we respect when we talk about going beyond the call. But of course, having said that, I know and I accept that you are overly burdened. I want to say this. Madam PS, we now well understand, and the listeners and the viewers understand, that the office of the DPP represents the state. In the United States, they say the USA, the people against so-and-so. They represent us, we. Permit me that language in exactitude. They represent we. They are therefore obviously particularly important to us. I want between you and the DPP to tell me succinctly the implementation of this modern, visionary, necessary case management system. If the idea was born only today, how long will it take to have that implemented in the office of the DPP? Forget yesterday. The idea was brand new today, born today. Between you and the DPP, have a whisper and tell me how long you anticipate it will take for this to be up and running. IT and all of that.
Thank you, Chairman. In speaking, as the DPP would have alluded to earlier, the case management system has been in its testing stages, in the final testing stages, and there were some issues that were identified, which the IT director, in conjunction with the provider who is implementing the whole system, they're trying to work out.
You are pressing me, Madam Pierce. I was being a bit hypothetical. If the idea was born today, I asked, how long will it take to have it up and running? But since you insist on dealing with the actual circumstance, how long has it been, or is it being tested? How long now has it been under test?
Can I just defer to my project manager?
Yes.
It has been in its testing stages. The system that is or was supposed to have been implemented by now.
How long has it been under this test? That's what I would like to know.
It would be remiss of me to
The project manager is here?
No, that's an IT.
IT.
Yes,
Does he have an answer to this question? Could any one of you tell me how long this system is being implemented and now in its final testing stages?
To give you a specific timeline, to say how long, I can't.
Roughly how long?
It's been about a year or so.
Mr. Chairman, it would be at least a year.
Okay. Now I revert to my original hypothetical. If the idea was born only today, how long do you think it will take to implement a modern case management system along the lines as so wonderfully visioned by the office of the office holder?
All things being equal,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
once there are no issues with the system, and like I said, all things being equal,
Yes.
it should not be a difficult issue, a difficult system to implement. That's provided, like I said, all things being equal, everything in place, it should not be a difficult system to put in place.
But in Trinidad, all things are never equal.
Well, that is true, Mr. Chairman.
But and as it's so unequal, I still didn't get a time, you know. I want to know. I'm asking.
It would be remiss of me to say, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that it will take a week, a month, but I go back to say, and as you rightly said, all things are not equal. It is,
All right. I would like you to tell this committee, after you consult with the experts in the office of the DPP and in your ministry, project manager and so on, I would like in writing for this committee, how long will it take from from birth of the idea to implement one? You could look at best practice anywhere in the world. We want an answer to that.
Will do so.
And we also want to know, when are we to expect the one that is under trial now for a year to be fully operational?
Will do, Mr. Chairman.
And I must tell you, we will continue these proceedings, I think, on the 7th of, I would like to invite you. I'll ask the secretary here, because we propose to finish at 12:30 today. Another 13 minutes from now, given that there's a sitting of the Parliament and some of us have to be at that sitting. So we propose to invite you again, committee, because these discussions will continue. And on that occasion, we would like some answers to the questions I have just put to you on behalf of the committee. And I also would like, before I give way to my friend, Member Ramadan, to know with great specificity, when can we expect new and adequate accommodation for the office of the DPP?
I can answer that one for you.
You can
now.
answer that now?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us now, please?
Okay, currently, there's a week coming, there'll be a note before Cabinet for the outfitting of the office in Tobago. Once Cabinet has approved, everything is in place. All that we are waiting for is Cabinet approval to proceed to award the contract for the outfitting of the office for Tobago.
Wonderful, that's Tobago.
Right.
What about Trinidad?
Okay, I'm getting there, sir. All right, for the North office, we have more or less sorted out all of the issues that were identified with the location at Port of Spain, with the DPP, with the save exception for the parking issue, which he has had some concerns with. And we, once we have that is settled, we can proceed now with making the recommendation with the Office of the Property and Real Estate in order to have that matter presented before Cabinet. So that is in train as well.
When we expect those processes to be undertaken?
Once all of our matters have, since our concerns, everything has already been presented to the Property and Real Estate. So in our next meeting, I'd be able to give you a more definitive timeline on that one. But we have dealt with all of the issues concerning the Port of Spain office.
If you want, you could bring the Property and Real Estate. Do you want us to summon them since they did not respond to your call?
No, sir. They would usually answer our matters, sir.
Present as well on that occasion.
Okay.
Because as Senator Richards said, it pains to know that the weak link in the chain between the protection of the office of the DPP on behalf of we the people is accommodation. That cannot continue. Member Ramadan.
Thank you very much. Chair, let me just say I'm
sorry. You wanted to comment on San Fernando? No, you know what? We'll take it in a package on the 7th.
Very well, sir.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it with the greatest anticipation.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I think it was very, very prudent to have indicated the invitation to property management, because from experience, that is where a lot of your difficulties would have occurred in the past, DPP. I know in relation to San Fernando, obtaining premises is very difficult, and where you are is atrocious. I mean, I immediately suggest that we have at least a shuttle in the interim for your officers, because I do know they have problems parking, and I've offered my office space. We do have some parking, but I know it wouldn't be appropriate because I'm defense counsel. So I do know they have to jostle with litigants, people they are prosecuting, jurors, trying to get car park, and so that is an issue that we really do need to immediately deal with. But back to the initial position, DPP, could you tell us, are you satisfied that the packages offered to potential DPP officers and present ones to retain them is adequate to the dangers and the difficulties of their work? One. Two, in relation to, I could see a very advanced role for you as we proceed into new crimes and a new way of doing things. The assistance that you have historically provided to the police in terms of a very initial investigation, I could see a great expansion of that. Are you preparing yourself in terms of the numbers and the experienced personnel? Because I know it rests on your shoulder and a precious few others to give the advice in certain investigations as we proceed. The other issue I want to raise, we've heard your very advanced view to creating sections for specific crimes, homicide, and so on. I could imagine the advice will come from those departments equally. But we have plea bargaining coming, which I know many are looking forward to that to assist you in a great way, but a tremendous burden is being also now put on your shoulders in terms of the preparation for plea bargaining. So you may want to consider creating another department to deal specifically with that, because we are suggesting equally, Chair, that the judiciary create a court specialized in the issue of plea bargaining and dealing with sentences from that. So we could streamline that as a new baby to allow it to grow on that aspect. In terms of the issue that is sometimes out of your hand, but I think it's important to continue dialogue with, for instance, the Commissioner of Police and others in terms of the quality of evidence, because your officers, when they go to trial, the quality of the evidence is what they already have, and we may not be able to improve it at that stage. So that is why we come back to the point of your advisory capacity very early on, and probably an oversight, as Senator Richards has pointed out, and many others in the past, the issue of forensics as an example. That is a fall down in relation to how cases move forward. And to the DPA, maybe you could assist me in relation to the hiring of officers, not just from the DPP, but for instance, for forensic pathologists. I know, fortunately, we were able to get the custodian for DNA. Are you also responsible for those hirings? Because I remember an issue in relation to forensic pathologists where advertisements had gone out, but by the time that we were able to get some confirmation from the necessary departments that yes, these are acceptable people, so much time had passed that we had lost them. And these are the things we need, the urgency of the now to really operate in our mind. So thank you. I know it's widespread, so DPP and of course whoever else could assist us on that.
Issue of remuneration.
Yes.
I should apprise you that my office would have proposed a risk allowance to the Salary Review Commission for consideration. The 98 report of the Salaries Review Commission, dated November 2013, however, highlighted that they were unable to recommend the introduction of any new allowances at that time. The Commission further indicated in the said report that security arrangements were not considered to be a term and condition of employment of office holders, and recommended that the matter be dealt with administratively. Well, we are yet to understand the recommendation that this be dealt with administratively, owing to the fact that this department does not have its own budget. This may be something for the urgent attention of the Attorney General and indeed the Cabinet. I should mention, though, that in previous administration, at least one, a previous Attorney General would have seen the need to provide the DPP's office with a risk allowance on an interim basis.
So there's a bit of a precedent there.
There is, sir. In addition to which, the Salary Review Commission highlighted in the 98 report in November 2013 that the payment of all extra allowances will be considered in an upcoming job evaluation exercise and compensation survey. To this date, that evaluation has not yet been completed. We are faced, therefore, to await the outcome of the job evaluation exercise, notwithstanding the fact that the risks are mounting and continue to be extant.
Bring them, we had to bring them here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Madam DPA, any thoughts on the submission by Mr. Ramadan?
I will have to do some research, and I understand that we'll be having another meeting on the 7th. That information will be provided at the request in time for that meeting.
All right. On behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, who the DPP represents, I leave this meeting and I speak as chairman. I hope I can find the support of all of my colleagues here. I leave this meeting with a deep sense of pain, deep within my Caribbean belly. I must tell you that I look forward to the 7th because all together, we are all in this thing together. All together, we are not doing as well as we should. I would want to suggest immediately that there be far more, I don't know if it exists, and if it does, well then my comments are now useless. But I would like to suggest that there be far more intimate, and I use that in a pure sense, communication between you three very critical office holders with a sense of urgency, with a sense of understanding of the nature of the problems that a proper functioning office of the DPP can resolve. I sensed that there has been slow or non-existent communications based on the opening submissions of the DPP and all of that. These are matters that can be fairly easily resolved. But we from this committee feel a deep sense of pain and commitment to resolving this problem. And we want to share that pain and share that commitment and share that focus with you. So do the research, and we look forward to your company again on the 7th of April in the year of our Lord 2007.
No, 17.
17, I'm sorry. 2017.
Should have been done in 2007.
I would like to suggest, on very useful advice, and my committee have just been reminded, that the issues that we traverse today be discussed in great detail with your line minister, Madam Pierce, Mr. Director. And as for you, Madam DPA, you enjoy a certain kind of insulation, so you have to speak to yourself. But speak loudly, speak well. Things are not the way they ought to be. I thank you all very much. Are there any closing comments that you would like to leave us with, Madam DPA?
Chairman, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the committee to be here today. One of the important points that I would like to make, because the offices that fall under the DPP and in judicial and legal service are such that the skills of the commission is needed, but I just wanted to point out that the commission is a part-time commission. I thank you.
I just want to tell you this, that we know anecdotally, we as parliamentarians and ministers and former ministers and all of us, we know, you know better than us, Madam DPA, Mr. DPP, Madam Pierce, that there are a whole lot of people being paid money in this country in the public service and in public service who are not doing what they are supposed to do. There's a lot of waste. And we have to find that waste and apply it to the office of the DPP. There are a lot of people who you contracted, who you appointed, who are sitting in offices all over this public service who are doing precious little for their salaries. And it is your job, it is our job, to find that waste and apply it to this urgent, pressing gap. And I use the word gap in a certain way that now subsists. Yes, Madam P.S.
Thank you, Chairman. A number of issues have come to the fore this morning concerning the operations of the DPP's office. I would like to put on record, and I take your point where you said more communication. I'd just like to put on record that the DPP and myself, we are meeting on Monday to discuss a number of these issues that would have arisen this morning and the way forward and how we address them.
I would like to suggest Saturday. And I'm serious. This thing is a crisis. This thing is urgent. Mr. DPP?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I would just like to reiterate my appreciation for your invitation to me and my office. There's one issue that I would like to place on the table somewhat tentatively, but I feel that it's an issue sufficiently material to deserve some consideration. Having regard to how things have gone historically with the DPP's office, I would make the bold submission, respectfully, that it's about time we begin some consideration as to whether or not the DPP's office should be afforded its own budget. As we speak, there are, just by way of an example, there are 8 photocopying machines in the DPP's office, only 2 are working. Now, if we have an increase in the staff, whether professional or non-professional, imagine 10 high courts in session, and you have 1 photocopier working in Port of Spain. In principle, no exception ought to be taken to a submission that the DPP's office should be afforded its own budget, bearing in mind its independent remit, and bearing in mind that the Commissioner of Police has his budget, the Chief Justice has his budget, Mr. David West of the police, the PCA, he has his own budget. So in principle, what is the sticking point?
And have you made formal submissions in this regard?
I have.
When last?
Not recently, because of how those submissions may have been treated with in the past.
I want to suggest that you not be a timorous soul. You must
I'm never a timorous soul, sir.
Continue to press. And I suggest that you advocate that position, refresh and advocate that position again. You may find it falls on moist rather than stony ground.
I'll be guided accordingly, Mr. Chairman.
Most certainly, most certainly. And members of the committee, any closing comment, each or any one of you? In which circumstance, I would like to thank you all for coming. It appears as though you understand this committee's deep concerns, as I would like to call this meeting to an end. Wish you a safe journey back to your respective offices and a stirring of your minds and spirits. And I look forward to meeting with you again. Thank you very much. Good luck and God bless.
Thank you.